Hi, I'm Genevieve Randall, Music Director with Nebraska Public Media, and I am so glad that you are here to participate in this pre-concert chat for this Lincoln's Symphony Orchestra concert. We've got a couple of special guests that we want to talk with, including one that you will be seeing on your screen right now, which is Vladimir Fung, a great cellist who is joining Lincoln Symphony Orchestra for this concert tonight, and Ed Polachek, of course, Lincoln Symphony Orchestra music director. We're so proud to support LSO with these pre-concert chats. Welcome, Ed and Vladimir.
How great to be with you, and how great it is to be here with Vladimir. This is a very exciting concert. We've had quite a run of concerts in the past several weeks at the Lead Center, and this one is very different in so many ways, you know. And I've got to say that before Vladimir actually takes the stage, we have a side-by-side with Lincoln Youth Symphony, which is directed by Clark Potter, of course, which is something that we do every year. It's one of our missions that we, you know, to be having the youth, the future musicians from Nebraska sitting side by side with Lincoln's Symphony Orchestra, followed by a premiere of a piece that we're going to get to in just a little bit. And then we're honored, really truly honored, to have actually the youngest candidate ever to win the gold medal at the Tchaikovsky competition in Russia. And actually the first American in I think it's over 40 years since that happened. So welcome, Vladimir. Welcome.
Yeah, and a
Thank you so much.
hearty congratulations to you. Boy, I can't even imagine. I have to ask first before we talk about what you're playing tonight. What goes through your mind? How do you mentally prepare for a competition like that?
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much. I'm really excited to be playing this weekend here in Lincoln and playing music that I really love. I'm just really looking forward to this collaboration. Yeah, so for competitions, there's a high element of pressure because you only get one shot, and you prepare a lot, and there's sort of one moment of truth where you have to demonstrate the quality and depth of your preparation. And so I think it's a very psychological thing, and I think that the more you do it, the better you get at it, and treating it no differently than any other important performance, having respect for the process of one's preparation and diligence, and also confidence in knowing that one has done everything that they could to prepare for that moment to the best of their ability. I think those are the only things that you can do.
Not unlike Olympic ice skating, let's face it.
Yeah.
It either is or it isn't, and it's the luck of the draw in terms of how you're feeling, what you're doing, and your mental attitude at the time. I mean, music tends to be that way in all aspects of performance, because we never know, we really don't. And I've always felt most what would be the word that I identify with the anxiety of a performer. I identify most with vocalists in some sense, because that human instrument can be affected by just things that, if I have a cold and I'm not feeling that well, I can still do my thing, or if I'm playing or whatever. But and I think that that do or die, that one and done aspect of a competition places an enormous amount of stress on the and Vladimir, I mean, I don't know, there are numbers of other competitions that you have won and placed in, but I can imagine that just the stature of the Tchaikovsky competition places that much more stress. The level has to go up in that. So it's really something to be very proud of, and we're very honored. We feel very privileged to have you with us this weekend.
So,
Thank you very much.
Vladimir, I'm going to assume that this is your first time coming to Nebraska.
Um, I think it is actually. Yeah, I'm really
Very
excited.
good. Okay, well, good. Welcome to Nebraska. We're glad to have you. And the piece that you're playing, I mean, I think it's probably an all-time favorite of many people who love cello concertos. But I will
Exactly.
admit that I was that nerd listening to this on my Walkman on cassette. You're too young to know what a cassette tape is. Right? Just binging the Elgar cello concerto. How long have you been playing this particular concerto?
Well, this is one of the concertos that every cellist, it's hard for a cellist to remember the first time they heard it.
Yeah.
It's because it's one of those pieces that's always there. It's sort of always been there, and the power of it, the emotional power of it, always has been inside us. My own personal journey with actually playing the piece began when I think I was 14 years old, and I learned it for the first time. Um, it was not the first big concerto that I learned. I learned a couple others before that. So, I learned it at that time, and then I've been playing it more recently in the past year. So, I've played it a number of times, yeah, in the past 12 months. So it's been really great to have those sort of two periods when I first learned the piece and now revisiting it and learning it anew.
Yeah, I love that. Well, it's so funny on this concert, which has this theme of the future of music. In your case, you're playing a concerto that has been played, as you mentioned, by almost every cellist. It's one of those standards you have to learn. You're the part in here that's the future, since you're a young up and coming cellist, right? So you're the part that's the future. But how do you approach a work like that when it comes with a lot of story and a lot of weight and tradition? What's your personal approach to the Elgar?
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a great question. One of the things that's really fascinating about this particular concerto is that it's one of the few standard repertoire works that we have recorded evidence, or rather recorded document of Elgar conducting in two separate recordings with the great English cellist Beatrice Harrison. So we have a glimpse into his mind and what he was thinking uh, about his own musical work. And then, of course, there are the famous recordings that captured the world, by Dupre, and then later Yo-Yo Ma, and so, as you mentioned, there's this big tradition, and for me, I've always been really passionate about discography and recording history, and I love old recordings. For me, the most interesting thing is um, to have interest and passion about many different types of recordings, and then synthesize the best ideas from all of them in the way that I approach the piece.
A very good technique. Excellent. Well, I'm sure we're going to look forward to hearing you play this concerto. We've got about another minute with you yet before we talk with Tyler White, who we're hearing some of his music as well on this concert this weekend here. But I'm curious to know about a little bit about your background, choice of cello, and then maybe the particular instrument that you play now. Because I'm sure when you started as a kid, some people aren't aware of this. They make smaller sized cellos when you're a little kid, right? To play. Did you start on one of those like quarter size, or three-quarter size cellos?
Yeah, so my first cello, I think, may have even been either 1/16 or 1/8 size. It was very small.
Really? How old were you when you first started?
So I was three and a
Oh
half,
my
and
gosh. I love it. That's amazing.
but the very first year, I think I didn't learn much beyond how to sit still, which is difficult in itself.
Are either of your
Absolutely.
parents musicians?
No, professionally not. My mother, she studied piano when she was young, but both of my parents were actually trained in mathematics.
Oh, interesting. I do
Mathematics
know
and
there's,
music so close. I mean,
yeah, I was gonna say there's
there's such a
crossover there.
correlation. There really is.
Absolutely.
So what is the instrument that we will hear you playing on the Elgar with LSO?
So the instrument that I'm currently playing on is a beautiful old Italian instrument made by the Cremonese maker Lorenzo Storioni, and I think it was made at the end of the 18th century, around 1790. And it's generously on loan to me.
And
Wow.
which bow, what kind of, or I shouldn't say what kind of, which bow are you using?
For the performance, I'll be using a beautiful bow that I actually very recently acquired, made by Dominique Picot.
Picot.
Yes, so I've really enjoyed getting to know this bow. I've only been playing on it for a few months, and it's magnificent.
I've been fascinated by string players because we talk mostly about the instrument itself. And you know, to the average listener, you might have heard of Guadagnini and Stradivarius, of course, and there are some very famous makers of the Cremona school. But I was fascinated to learn just how different a bow can make an instrument, the same player, sound. I mean, people have no idea that the stick that you hold in your hand with that horsehair can totally change the sound of of the production of your sound. I'm always fascinated by that. I've heard of the Picot bow. I'm
Vladimir,
not a string player,
how
but I
many
have
how
heard of
many
it.
different bows do you own, Vladimir?
I have, a main bow and then like a backup. So I think it's pretty common for players to have a couple, and also it's always interesting for us to have at least one modern bow made by a living maker. They tend to be more inexpensive, and it's good to support the work of living craftsmen. So.
Good
Absolutely.
for
Well,
you.
you're one of those craftsmen whose craft we will get to experience on this concert. Vladimir Fung, at 22, he was the youngest winner of the 2019 Tchaikovsky competition, and we get to see him on a stage with Lincoln Symphony Orchestra playing Elgar's Cello Concerto in E minor on this concert. And I guess Tyler White's going to come in and join us here in a moment. Vladimir, thank you so much for your time, and looking forward so much to hearing you play this cello concerto.
Absolutely. Welcome to Lincoln, my friend.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited for this performance. Really appreciate it.
Excellent. Well, so Tyler White is going to be making his way into the chat here. And as we wait for Tyler to jump on, I'll point out that this piece that we're going to hear by the composer in residence, Tyler is the first composer in residence that Lincoln Symphony Orchestra has
That's right.
had. Ed, tell me why that's important as we welcome Tyler in here. Why is it important to have a composer in residence? This is the first time the symphony's done this.
Well, you know, Tyler has been, I mean, he's a figure within Lincoln, even long before I even came. And I'm in my 24th year here. He is a cultural icon in many ways, where he has taught conducting, he conducts the orchestra, he conducts the opera, he teaches composition. He's a man of incredibly many talents. And he is, in my book, you know, one of the great composers of our time. And we were just lucky to have him here in Lincoln, right? And he's been on our podium many times. But I must say that in earlier on in researching his music, I was like, my gosh, this man does all kinds of things. In fact, he composes opera. He doesn't only conduct it, he composes opera. So he knows the voice, he knows the string instruments. Actually, he knows all of the instruments incredibly well. And as an orchestra within a community, we felt that it was very important. One of our big challenges is to search out and promote the music of living composers, as well as composers of color and different ethnicities, um, from yesteryear to the present. And when we realized that we had in our midst a great composer, I said, this is a no-brainer. Tyler White has to be our very first composer in residence, and that's really how it started. I mean, Tyler had written a piece for me, and this is the irony of the whole thing. He wrote a piece called Brand New Summer that I just adore. And we've programmed it three times, I think, right? and each time I never got to conduct it. The first time I fell ill, and Tyler stepped in and actually conducted it. And I remember hearing from the orchestra afterwards, he said that during the rehearsals, Tyler said, "Gosh, if I knew I had to conduct it, I would have never made it this complicated." It's a great piece. And then it was programmed twice during the pandemic, and of course it never happened. But I will get to it, I promise you. At some point we will do it. But I'm very, very, very excited about this piece that people are going to hear on Friday evening at the Lead Center, because it's a world premiere. And I actually premiered something of Tyler's last year, quite by accident, because we had to shift some of the programming to a smaller orchestra because the needle was in the orange or in the red, and so we had to socially distance the orchestra and myself and all that kind of thing. And Tyler had written a string symphony, his symphony number 3, but this is symphony number 4, metaclassical. And I give you now the great Tyler Goodrich White. Please tell us about this piece, Tyler, because
absolutely.
It's brilliant.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
Welcome to the chat, Tyler.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I coined this term metaclassical, and it may confuse some people. I hope I can explain it. A lot of listeners may be familiar with the term neoclassical, referring to music of about 100 years ago that harkens back to music of the 18th century as kind of an antidote to sort of superheated romantic emotion. And they may be also familiar with the term postmodern, which it signifies a return to tonality, to pretty harmonies, as well as often quotations of familiar older works, but often from a sort of ironic, emotionally distanced standpoint. And so in coining this term metaclassical, I was trying to move beyond both of these stylistic outlooks that I'm very interested in, and to write music that uses 18th century forms, but doesn't shy away from big emotions either, and that also uses references, allusions to earlier music, but doesn't do so in an ironic way, that views it as a living tradition that we can build on and expand upon and translate into our own time.
Wow. That's pretty cool. Oh my gosh, there's going to be so much to listen for in this.
It is, right. There is. It's fascinating.
And one thing I stress about it, there are allusions to lots of different works by Haydn and Mozart and Beethoven and Debussy and even Vaughan Williams. But if listeners don't catch those references, or if they don't know those pieces, or some of them, or even any of them, it really shouldn't matter at all, because I really my intention is to write a piece that makes sense on its own, that tells its own story.
Yes, absolutely.
And it tells its own story. Yeah,
absolutely. And it does beautifully.
So Tyler,
and of course that's the best way of viewing the past, as something that you make use of in living your own life and saying what you have to say,
making it present day. Absolutely.
Yeah, so Tyler, I have a question for you. We have just a couple of minutes left in our chat, and I want to make sure that Ed talks just a little bit about the piece that the Youth Symphony is going to play. But, as you were talking about the way you conceived this concept for your 4th Symphony for metaclassical, I was thinking about all of that tradition, that even those folks who aren't, steeped in classical music, it's enough to say that many composers after Beethoven felt there was a thing there. They felt this cloud, whether it was like the number of symphonies they wrote, they had suspicions that they were going to die after writing number 8,
Yeah, right.
or whatever. Or if it was Brahms, he took until his 40s to write a symphony because he felt like, oh my gosh, it's not going to be as good as Beethoven. And a symphony really, when you're quoting folks like Mozart or Haydn, it comes out of kind of a form. There's a form that's used. There's an idea of a certain number of movements and a kind of flow from, fast to slow to fast again. But now, these days, what is a symphony?
It can be anything, and it can be almost anything. And now I purposely gave myself the challenge of writing a 4-movement, very classically structured work. I even have a minuet.
It's true. Nervoso.
Yeah, a nervous minuet. And it's a minuet that would be impossible to dance to. But it's an edgy minuet.
It's fabulous. I gotta tell you, I just love this piece. It's going to be, and it's as we know, if you know any of Tyler's work, if he gets going on something, it can be some of the most challenging, technically and musically. It's both. It's like Brahms in a way, because you have to have your wits about you when you approach this. It took me, I will admit, it took me a while to get to start tearing away the layers to figure out, what are these phrase pairs? They're not the even ones that I'm going to see in Haydn and in Schubert and I had to figure out, oh, is this where he's taking me? And then there are these elisions, and then there's some absolute stops too. So you have to you really have to study very, very carefully. But when you unlock that, I mean, that box opens up and it's just filled with gems. It's great. It's incredible. I'm really getting, we're all, I had the first rehearsal on Monday night with the orchestra, and we went through the piece. And I have to admit that the orchestra had just gotten off a very challenging week with Danny Elfman and his music at the Lead Center. It was the Danny Elfman week last week. So, and it was, just fistfuls of notes that they had to do, and changes on a dime that you had to go from loud to soft, fast to slow, changing of meters and all that kind of stuff. Not unlike Tyler's piece. I mean, it really set them up for it. So even though they were exhausted, they were actually very much on top of this. And and I know that it took a lot of practice time, because I could just tell from studying the score that it was going to take that kind of musical commitment in order to make it work. And now we're all excited about it. I mean, it's brilliant. Good. It's brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, I always well, thank you for the Brahms reference. I'm flattered, and the but I always, I feel that way about the standard I set for myself in terms of Brahms and in terms of Bach, and how Bach just never lets up.
Right.
And he always keeps asking for you to do something more. And so that's something that sort of crept into my musical personality. And I sometimes feel I have to apologize for it, but I don't think there's anything to apologize for.
No. How many children did you have, by the way?
No. Yeah, right. Yeah.
If you're emulating Bach, you would have populated all of Nebraska.
I have 1/10 as many children as Bach.
Well, Tyler, I can't help but notice that you have another great composer over your shoulder. And am I seeing Aaron Copland on the Zoom here?
Oh, that's Stravinsky.
Oh, Stravinsky. Oh, yeah. Okay. I just seeing from the side at an angle, and I was like, oh, yeah.
There he is. There he is. Yeah. He always peers over my shoulder. Just to keep me honest.
Well, we'll be so excited to peer into the music that you have written in your 4th symphony called Metaclassical, a really fun name too. So thanks so much for talking with us about your symphony, Tyler.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Ed, while we've got you, just 30 seconds. I want you to tell us just a little bit about Five Movements in Color by Mary Watkins, which is the piece that is being played in the side-by-side where the
And the
symphony.
side-by-side with Lincoln Youth Symphony. So Mary Watkins, a composer of color, graduate of Howard University, right in my neighborhood back in Maryland. She, when you're researching music that you don't know, composers that you're not familiar with, you have to sift through a lot of things. And I have to tell you that the moment I heard her piece, Movements in Color, I was blown away. I said, I got to do this. So we're only doing 2 of the 5 movements. We're doing Drive-By Runner and Soul of Remembrance. And I've got to tell you, that Soul of Remembrance is probably going to pull your heart out. It is going to, there's not going to be a dry eye in the house. It is so beautiful. You'll be weeping by the end. Kind of the way the Barber of Daggio for strings, but it ends on this question mark. It's brilliant stuff. And I thought, why not share this with the youth of today? I mean, this is music of today that we want to be preparing them for, as well as the standards, the Bach, Brahms, and Bernstein, Beethoven. They're all the big B's of it in classical music, etc. But I'm very excited about this Mary Watkins as an opening, and it's a great prelude into Tyler's piece on the first half.
Yeah, so you have some B's and some W's.
There you go, B and W.
That's right. Oh, well, we're all looking forward to this. A concert aptly titled The Future of Music with Lincoln Symphony Orchestra at the Lead Center for Performing Arts. So glad that you've joined us for this pre-concert chat. It was really fun to talk to Vladimir Fung earlier, who on the second half of the show will play that Elgar cello concerto. We also get to hear Tyler White's music in his Symphony No. 4 called Metaclassical, and the Lincoln Youth Symphony gets to join in. Definitely the future of music here in the Youth Symphony, right? Playing right alongside members of Lincoln Symphony Orchestra with music director Ed Polachek tonight on that piece called Five Movements in Color by Mary Watkins. 2 of those movements anyway. So thanks for coming to the concert. Thanks for watching this chat. And my huge thanks earlier to Vladimir Fung. And thanks to you, Tyler White, composer in residence. And thank you, Ed Polachek.
It's always such a privilege and a pleasure to be with you, Genevieve. Thank you.